When I was young, like most people, I would only get new games on special occasions. This led me to having a small but treasured collection of games that I would play over and over again, no matter how bad I was at them. My family didn't go to rental shops, so outside of playing games at friends' and relatives' houses, my little collection was all I had. When I did get the chance to pick up something new, I would head down to my local game shop, money clutched tightly in hand, ready to pick out my next gaming experience. On one such trip on my 10th birthday, I made a life-changing decision. One that would expose me to gaming on a level I had never seen before. I used one of my few precious chances to purchase a brand new game to get Rascal on PS1. I remember getting home, excited, rushing to my PS1 and booting up the game. I was greeted with logos from companies that I knew well, Traveller's Tales and Psygnosis. These guys were on some of my most beloved Mega Drive games: Lemmings 2 Tribes, Toy Story, Sonic 3D, Wiz and Liz. But right when I began to feel proud of making another wise purchase, I started playing the game, and it was crap. Unplayably so, in fact. In my short 10 years of existence, I had never experienced a game quite like it. It was bad in ways that only 32-bit 3D games could be. The camera was unwieldy, often jumping around and leaving you facing your character head on. Combining this with the tank controls made things really confusing, turning every screen transition into an absolute nightmare. This made any attempts at platforming near impossible. In a 3D action platformer, I found myself completely, utterly unable to play this video game. In fact, I reacted to the whole ordeal so badly, I did the unthinkable. I traded it in and bought something else. Never before had I played a game so bad that I wanted to stop owning it. And I had both Bubsy games. Okay, I put this joke in the script, but honestly, I unironically loved the Bubsy games as a kid. Are they good by today's standards? No. Were they good to a 7-year-old with too much time on his hands? Oh heck yeah they were! To this day, Rascal is the only game I have ever traded in. Does this mean the whole experience led me to evolve into some kind of god that never bought a dud again? Of course not. I would continue to miss the mark and buy plenty more terrible games.
Oh my god!
In fact, the game I traded Rascal in for was Jersey Devil, another pretty crappy 3D platformer. That's right, I buggered up again immediately. I may have kept it since then out of embarrassment, but back in those days nothing hit me quite like Rascal did. And that really stuck with me. As I grew up, I got interested in games development and began thinking about terrible games from a different perspective. I realised these bad games were built by regular people who were making choices. People with hopes, dreams, and visions. But as I learned more, I kept coming back to the same question. Why do games like Rascal exist? Game studios surely don't go out of their way to spend thousands of pounds and work hours just to churn out objectively bad games. No. I found that most bad games came with a story, a reason for them to exist as they did. Sometimes the studio ran out of time, by their own mismanagement or due to strict deadlines. perhaps they were trying something experimental, and it didn't quite work out. Maybe they were just too ambitious, and the game they tried to make was beyond their capabilities. Or possibly, as in Rascal's case, those pesky publishers got their greasy mitts on it and changed it for the worse. Over time, I gained an appreciation for these knackered knickknacks, and as part of my ever-widening search for more bad games, I came to learn that some of them fall into a category all of their own. Kusoge. I was a changed man, having been instantly hooked by both the charm and variety available in this subgenre of games. I proceeded to spend a substantial portion of my existence on the hunt for and enjoyment of these Japanese oddities. Hi there. Been a while, hasn't it? For those of you that don't know me, which is honestly most of you, I am Game Gaijin. You might recognise me as that guy that tried to tank the price of Rule of Rose. Having very much achieved that, it was definitely thanks to me, shut up. I figured my next project should spend some time talking about one of my favourite aspects of retro games, Kusoge. So, grab yourselves a brew and join me as I mull over this subculture of gaming for far too long across multiple videos. Just what are Kusoge? Why are they worth playing? How does Japan view them differently to the West? And how could we learn to improve our outlook on not just gaming, but life in general along the way? This wasn't supposed to take this long, and I only wanted to make a single video, but in typical me fashion, I got carried away and well, here we are. At least I've limited myself to like a mini-series, you know? Only 4, maybe 5 episodes? Ooh, because I got carried away, this episode, as far as I can tell, includes never before translated info, so that's cool. Oh hey, the intro. Kusoge, or Kusoge as it's pronounced in Japanese, translates to crap game. It's a portmanteau of the words kuso, meaning crap, terrible or bad, and gemu, meaning, well, game. Gemu itself is actually a shortening of the word terebi gemu, since you know, you play games on a telly. 5つのカセットが揃ったエポック社のテレビゲーム、カセットビジョン. Now, Japan loves to shorten phrases like this, so you bet there's going to be plenty more examples of it throughout this mini-series. Prepare yourselves. Now, the eagle-eared among you may have noticed that they aren't called Kusoge, but Kusoge. So, where'd the moo go? Honestly, it's not something I'd considered until I started making this video. Determined to find the answer, what followed was an abyss that consumed my life for weeks. My initial research showed that the word originated from Jun Miura, a writer, illustrator, musician, and generally multi-talented Japanese celebrity that was once described to me as the god of subculture. Many places claim that Miura first used the term to describe Sunsoft's Famicom game, Iki, mocking its absurdity that you cannot cause an uprising with just 1 or 2 people, and uprising gives the impression that it involves a lot of people, but there were only 2 guys. Seems like an easy answer then. All I needed to do was find the first instance of Miura calling Iki Kusoge, and it would be case closed. So I began my search. Article after article, blog post after blog post, all stating that Iki was the first Kusoge and the term had been coined by Miura. But none of them had any accompanying sources. The more I tried to look into it, the less I found. It was starting to feel like an urban legend, hearsay from 40 years ago, that was now being treated as fact. But Miura wrote articles for several magazines in the 80s. You'd think it would have come up at least once during that time. I stepped away from my desk. That was enough research for one day. After a couple of days of this, it was starting to affect my sleep. Miura appearing in my dreams, taunting me. I had to get to the bottom of this and free myself from this torment. Answers to Kusoge's greatest mystery are nowhere to be found. 13 days remain. It was here that I stumbled across a fantastic article written by Japanese retro enthusiast and blogger Tiny P. They had combed through dozens of old Japanese magazines in search of exactly what I was looking for: the origins of the term Kusoge. They'd discovered the first written instance of the term Kusogame, that is plus the mu, as part of an article in the August 1986 edition of Bug News magazine. The article, written by Miura and including commentary from Emiko Shimoda, aka Puyan Shimoda, was titled Gero Gero Rando Kusogame Tournament. It also included an illustration from Miura with the lion. I have gotten caught up in these crappy games. How sad. The tournament included several participants who ranked 14 Famicom games as being Kusogames. However, Tiny P notes that in the same month, expert button masher and real-world master Higgins, Toshiyuki Takahashi, aka Takahashi Meijin, released his book, To All Famicom Warriors, You Are the Master. I reveal all my secret techniques. It includes the lion, and occasionally there are games that make me think, what is this? It's boring, make it better. These are called Kusoge. When I play these kinds of games, they drive me up the wall. This references Kusoge in its current form, rather than Miura's usage of Kusogame. But it's worth noting the wording used by Master Takahashi here. It makes it sound like he heard the phrase from somewhere else, rather than having invented the term himself. I felt a little closer to the truth, but there were still so many unknowns. Who shortened Kusogame to Kusoge? Where did Master Takahashi hear the term from in order to include it in his book? How does Iki fit into all this? Answers to Kusoge's greatest mystery seem a little closer than before. 9 days remain. After a few more days of lost sleep spent scouring old Japanese forums and blog posts, I couldn't find an answer to those first two questions. Neither could Tiny P, who mentions in their article that there are two possibilities. Either A, Master Takahashi heard the term from Miura, one of the tournament participants or an editor, before the book went out and changed the term to Kusoge. Or B, the term came from a completely separate source, making this another dead end. In terms of hearing it from other sources, Tiny P highlights plenty of other examples of similar phrases being used. Take the weekly Playboy issue from 5 months prior, and the article titled Yo! Famicom Wakadaisho! Famicom Revolving News. Yo! Since the release of Super Mario last October, a massive number of software has been released. However, it has predominantly been Kuso Softo. Isn't there anything out there that can get Wakadaisho's heart pumping? Famicom Wakadaisho, or Famicom Young Commander, was a pen name used by the legendary Satoshi Tajiri. Yes, Mr. Pokemon himself. Here he uses the term Kusosoft, or crappy software, no doubt a phrase born from his history with PC gaming and writing for publications like Login magazine. Software and game are synonymous in Japanese, so seeing Kusosoft evolve into Kusogame, then Kusoge, is not a large leap in logic. This could have been passed on to Master Takahashi, but no evidence has been found to support this. Speaking of Login magazine, in the October 1986 issue, legendary games designer and a Dragon Quester, Hori Yuji, used the term Kasugemu, or junk, worthless game, in his segment Rainbow Dip Switch. There were a lot of these alternatives to Kusoge knocking about at the time, and I could go on. So I will. Check these out.
Dame softo.
No good software.
Taco softo.
Useless software.
Ska softo.
Scat software.
I'm a scat man.
I was no closer to finding out who first started using the term Kusoge, and my chances of doing so didn't look great. But this did raise another question. With all these terms being bandied about, why was Kusoge the one that had survived, sentencing all these other terms into obscurity? This one I think we can answer, and it could actually have something to do with Namco. In 1987, Namco released a glossary of gaming terms called the Shinmeikai Namugo Jiten. This was a parody of a famous series of Japanese dictionaries published by Sanseido, the Shinmeikai Kokugo Jiten. Here, they have replaced Kokugo, i.e. Japanese, with Namugo, a portmanteau of Namco and Go, which is a suffix for language. This Namco language listed Kusoge as follows. Kusoge, noun, referring to a worthless, boring, stupid game. This word originated in southern Aoyama, but there are various expressions depending on the region, such as useless software and rip-off software. A very short and simple description that also alludes to its many counterparts. Despite being laid out like a dictionary, the Namugo Jiten is basically a collection of articles printed in Beep magazine from the author Takanori Nishijima, complete with tongue-in-cheek humour throughout. This means we should probably treat any definitions it contains with a pinch of salt. That's right, to the surprise of no one, the parody dictionary shouldn't be treated like an actual dictionary. However, Kusoge's inclusion both here and in Beep magazine will have helped greatly in proliferating the term. And don't think I didn't notice that reference about Kusoge originating in southern Aoyama. Sorry to disappoint, but that could just be referring to the magazine Famicom Tsushin, published by ASCII, who were based in the area around that time. Their 12th of December 1986 issue included a basic knowledge of game terms section that described Kusoge as follows. This is a word young boys should not use. Generally, it refers to a game that makes you just want to cover your eyes. E.g., you really bought that crap game? I know I am repeating myself, but young boys should not use this word. Look, telling young lads not to use a bad word is about as effective as the gun in Takeshi's challenge.
Miss.
Meaning this description surely had the opposite effect and encouraged Famicom gremlins everywhere to adopt the term even more. But the Namago dictionary wasn't the only thing Namco did that could have helped spread the term Kusoge. Throughout 1985 and 1986, Namco ran an ad campaign for their Famicom games that included the catchphrases "Fantasy is fertilizer for your head" and "Fantasy before bed" or "Fantasy before going to sleep." These catchphrases are a play on words turning Kuso into Kuso, which means daydream or fantasy. The aim appears to be to try putting a positive spin on the various negative game terms around at the time, most interestingly using the word Kuso to do it. Remember, Miura's Bug News article and Master Takahashi's book weren't released until August 1986, so this ad campaign starting in 1985 means a potential third individual also made the connection between Kuso and games. In this case, the individual was... checks notes... Shigesato Itoi. Are you bloody serious? Were there any gaming legends that didn't have a hand in creating the word Kusoge?
Oh, this is never going to end, is it?
How these ads work is actually pretty cool, so let's take a closer look. Right.
For stupid. Trust me to wear green in front of the bloody green screen.
Right, so as you can see here, they've decided to write Kuso in katakana. Katakana is a Japanese alphabet that's used for loan words and... look, we don't have time to get into all that now, just roll with it, trust me. This is to make you think about the word kuso, which is also written in katakana, and then associate the two together. See? Now, this is opposed to displaying kuso in its usual kanji form, seen here, which might not induce the same association effect as the katakana, since it would be a lot less obvious. By writing it this way, they got to say something fairly positive about Namco games, invoking thoughts of daydreaming and letting your imagination run wild through gaming, all the while making a funny ha-ha about pooping before you sleep. Now, consider that the target audience for this is children. Not only is poop funny, but as mentioned in Famicom Sushin, Kuso is a word that kids shouldn't be using. This allows Namco to create a funny phrase that kids can use without getting into trouble, that also happens to make them think about their Famicom games like, I don't know, Pac-Man. Or Dig Dug. And it worked! This is a very memorable and catchy phrase that has stuck with people to this day. There are tons of blogs out there commenting on how they still remember the fantasy poop before bed line, even 40 years later. The whole style of the advert worked as well. Foreign kids in the woods, playing games on their little bubble TV, all the while being stalked by this absolute bog brush of a mascot character. I mean, look at it. It looks like Bertie Bassett made love to the Amiga Tech demo.
How do you eat my famous babies?
She bites the middle first.
We're head biters.
What do you do, Norman?
I bite legs, Bertie.
As memorable as it is, I think it's a bit of a stretch to try and say that this is the first instance of Kusoge or Kusoge, since, you know, the word doesn't even appear. However, I think it may have been the catalyst that eventually led Miura to put the two words together, especially when you consider that while he was a student, he used to frequent Itoi's office, and he got his manga debut thanks to Itoi's recommendation. Basically, I argue that not only did this whole campaign help to cement Kusoge as part of common gaming vernacular, but also that it may have even influenced Miura when he created the term Kusoge. Now, how do I get out of here? After doing all that research, I was able to find a potential source for the term Kusoge and get an understanding about how it managed to stick around. But the origins of where it left its moo looked to be lost to time. Not feeling completely satisfied with what I had found, I took 5 to regroup and look at the information I had gathered. What did I know? 1. Miura's first usage of the term Kusoge was most likely in Bug News' August 1986 issue. 2. While this was not the first time the term Nani Nani Soft or Nani Nani Game was used to deride a game, it was most likely the first usage of the combination Kuso and game. 3. The article in that magazine covered a tournament that ranked 14 Famicom games as Kuso games. 4. Iki was apparently the first Kusoge and was given the definition by Miura. Ranked 14 Famicom games, Kuso games. Every puzzle has an answer. Hang about. I've completely forgotten about Iki. I still don't have a clue as to whether or not it was the first Kusoge. So, which games were awarded the title of Kuso game in that tournament? And who else other than Miura and Shimoda took part in it? If this was the first instance of the term Kuso game being used, and Iki was one of the games awarded with the title of Kuso game, then I could at least prove or disprove the urban legend around Iki being the first Kusoge. Heck, while I was at it, I could even take a look at the other participants that helped pick out this initial batch of games. With a renewed vigour, I returned to Tiny P's article. My bedrock, my holy text in this search for answers to what, at that point, had become the most important question in my entire life. And they don't mention any of the games in the article. Not a single entry. They don't even say who participated in the tournament and helped pick which games got awards. Another dead end. No problem though. I'll just go online and look for scans of the magazine. I mean, you can find scans of many old retro magazines these days, so it should be a piece of cake. And nothing. Bugger all. Sweet FA. I'm losing my mind. Why is this so hard? You would think an important part of gaming history like this would be better documented. I'd hit a real wall this time. It looked like it was all over. Dishevelled. I tried my final Hail Mary, buying a copy of the magazine. It's nearly 40 years old, so the odds were slim, but I had to try. Mercari was a bust. Just a bunch of sales that ended months ago. I turned to Yahoo Auctions and was reminded that you can't access anything Yahoo related outside of Japan without a VPN. Thanks, GDPR. Time to ask a Japanese friend for help. I got in touch with my buddy Ponjo and waited with bated breath. After around 15 minutes, I see her begin to type a message. My blood runs cold. What if this is another dead end, and it all turns out to have been a massive waste of time? After everything I'd gone through up to this point, I didn't know if I could face that. I was greeted by this. There's one copy currently up for auction and it ends on Friday. That's just 2 days from now. I couldn't believe my luck. I felt as though I'd won the lottery. Ponjo made a bid of 700 yen on my behalf, and we waited. I went to bed that night excited, unable to sleep with the potential that lay before me. Answers to the unknown are within your grasp. 7 days remain. Friday rolled around and partway through my rigorous morning workout, I received a message. Ponjo had won the magazine! Get in! In order to get access to the article as quickly as possible, I asked her to take photos of the pages I needed as soon as it arrives. Nothing to do after that, but carry on with my workout and wait. The mystery finally draws to a close. Good luck, Space Cowboy. One agonising week full of frantically checking every single Discord message later, I received these 2 photos. These 2 images held the answers to weeks' worth of research. Who other than Miura helped pick out the world's first Kusoge? Would Iki be on the list? All I had to do was translate it to find out. Okay, let's cover the basics first so we know what we're dealing with. What exactly was this tournament and how were the potential games decided? Essentially, Miura had the idea to get a bunch of fellow game enjoyers from the industry together and have them bring as many games with them as possible. The plan was then to marathon them all in a single night and pick out the top 10 Kuso games to put in the article. He ran this past the column's co-writer Shimoda, and they held the event with the following self-proclaimed Famicom Masters: Miura and Shimoda themselves, illustrator Suji Amakane and his wife, Machiyama from Takarajima Magazine, Ito from Peter Magazine, Namekawa from Emma Magazine, Ojima from Fusosha Publishing, Iron Gamer Tanaka from Bug News' own editorial department, and Tezuka Zhou from Mario's Dream? Yeah, I still haven't figured out how to leave the green screen realm. I've just kind of been chilling out down here hoping you guys couldn't see me. So, cards on the table. I've got no idea who this is. Shoot. Since it relates her to Mario, she could be connected to Takashi Tezuka, assistant director and games designer for Super Mario Bros. Director and games designer for a lot of early Legend of Zelda titles. You know, that Takashi Tezuka. The use of Zhou immediately makes you think it might be his daughter, but he was only 26 at the time, so that doesn't really line up. Maybe it's his wife or sister? I tried looking, I really did, but I couldn't figure out who she is. And honestly, I had to stop somewhere or this video would never end. Please, the video has to end eventually. I can't spend the rest of my life working on part 1 of a mini-series. Also, how the hell do I get out of here? So these were the brave Famicom warriors that sat down one night and played a ton of games, culminating in them awarding 14 titles with the prestigious Kuso Game accolade. The names of the awards are all quite humorous, making reference to the Kusogyokai, or the crappy industry. Like the Kusogyokai no Naisugai Award, aka the Crappy Industries Nice Guy Award, given to Thexter. Or the Kusogyokai no Abarenbo Award, aka the Crappy Industries Hooligan Award, given to Exerion, which is misspelled as Exerion. Perhaps this was on purpose to highlight Eguizerion's exceptional quality. My favourite by far is the Kusogyokai no Himanji Award, or Crappy Industries Fat Kid Award, which was given to Obakyu, or Obake no Kyutaro 11 Paniku. Not only did it make me laugh out loud, but it fits the game nicely, since Ghost Boy Kyutaro does nothing but stuff his face in this game. I mean, just check out that thick ghost booty.
Damn.
This particular award works even better when applied to the US version, Chubby Cherub, where the insatiable ghost has been turned into a naked man-child. You know, I'll never understand the criteria they used to apply when censoring games in North America. No religious or satanic references, no drugs or alcohol, and, most criminal of all, no puff puff. But playing as a floating man baby and slapping his nude ass on the box? No, that's fine, I don't see anything wrong with that. Okay, enough with the suspense already. It's time for the most important question of all. Is Iki on the list? Well, yes, actually. It was nominated for the Kusogyokai no Otobokeyaku Award, or the Crappy Industries Dopey, Lovable Idiot Award. It was also given the bonus Crappy Level Award alongside Road Fighter, since they both have only 4 stages available. The meaning behind the title isn't explained in the article, but we can hazard a guess based on the feelings Miura has expressed elsewhere that is related to its nonsensical title. So there it was, black and white on the page for all to see. Iki was in fact one of the first Kusoge. But it wasn't the first Kusoge, and that is an important distinction to make. It was one of many games that helped define the subgenre, alongside classics like Ninja Jajamaru-kun, Raid on Bungling Bay, and Ninja Hattori-kun. Together they all act like a series of launch titles for Kusoge as a concept, rather than it being defined by Iki alone.
Here, for the first time ever in one place, it's the original Kusoge collection. 14 of the finest Kusoge you know and love, from a whole variety of different studios, packed into this single craptastic collection. This unbelievable assortment of Kusoge is not available in any stores, or anywhere for that matter. But if you want to give me £39.99 anyway, you can. This once-in-a-lifetime pack includes such Famicom classics as The Crappy Industries Overseer, Super Arabian, The Crappy Industries Lone Wolf, Ninja-kun, Adventure of Devil Castle, aka Ninja Kid, The Crappy Industries New Type, Pachikon, The Crappy Industry Bababa no Taro, Gegege no Kitaro Yokai Daimakyo, aka Ninja Kids.
What is with these confusing English release names?
What do you mean the hyphen makes all the difference? Reading them both out loud makes me sound like a twat. Oh, real mature cockwomble. You're lucky there's a pane of glass between us. Right, we're taking this outside. And that was it. End of article. Those 4 pages had indeed held the answers I'd been searching for all this time, and I finally started to feel some closure. I could confidently say I'd debunked the myth that Ikki was the first Kusoge, and showed that Miura and many other famous gaming figures had a big influence in shaping the term as we know it today. Sure, I still had no idea exactly when or through whom Kusoge evolved into Kusoge, but that didn't matter. I'd gained a deeper understanding of Kusoge's history and had found some information that had seemed lost to time. And that was enough for me. At long last I was free to put an end to my search and return to my everyday life.
Man, what a ride that was. After remembering I could just walk away from the green screen. Hang on. Dumbass. I got on with putting this all together, and the rest, as they say, is history. Well, that tangent felt like it went on forever. What was I trying to do again? Oh right, trying to explain the meaning of the word Kusoge. Should be pretty easy now, yeah? We've seen many definitions for Kusoge throughout this video, and even though they've been largely negative, I hope you've come to realise that this is not just a term used on games that we in the West would describe as crap, the boring, the poorly designed, the broken. No, it can also be used to highlight the absurdity in a game's concept or setting. Take Ikki, a shining example that we've just spent absolutely ages proving wasn't the first Kusoge. Now, Ikki is not a bad game. Short, yes, but that's to be expected of an arcade port from 1985. No, Miura called Ikki Kusoge because of the setting, not the gameplay. It was all about that mismatch between the title, one of revolt, and then the fact that said revolt was, at best, headed up by just 2 geezers.
Ikki isn't our only example of this either. Just look at the other 14 OG Kusoge and the titles that Miura and Co. awarded them. All humorous in nature, showing that this was all just a bit of a laugh. An excuse for friends to get together and enjoy some games. This allowed the collective of Famicom masters to step back and analyse the games from a different perspective, rather than just writing them off as bad experiences like so many others. They were showing an appreciation of games that fell short of the mark in neat and interesting ways. I think it says it all at the end of the Bug News article. Even while stating it was no good, Miura-san continued to play his treasured Zunosen Kangaru over and over again.
Powerful, powerful cinema. This mirrored my own feelings on Kusoge and bad games in general, in a way that I really didn't expect to find when I started this whole thing. The Famicom masters had that same change in perspective that I'd developed in my years growing up loving games design. We were drawn to these games for the same reason, that they can offer funny and enjoyable experiences regardless of quality. They're pieces of media worth analysing from a different angle than just bad games bad. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We've got plenty of time to get into that in a future episode. But before we call it a day, there's one last thing I'd like to mention regarding the definition of Kusoge, and that is how it differs slightly inside and outside of Japan. Outside of Japan, Kusoge is often used to refer specifically to bad Japanese games. That's how I will be using it in this mini-series, since my primary audience, fellow Western barbarians, are most likely to recognise it in that context. However, I do want to highlight that in Japan it's used for any bad game, regardless of origin. In this respect, Rascal is considered Kusoge. We've gone full circle, baby! Think of it like how the West uses the term anime to describe Japanese animation, whereas in Japan, anime is just anything animated. So, in a nutshell, Kusoge are a spectrum of bad, weird and strange games that are not necessarily Japanese, but are often thought of as such. Right, it took me way too long to get to that simple description. Probably a bit late for me to pop in a TLDR, eh? Well, now we've finally finished defining the term, next time we can take a look at the history of Kusoge and how it evolved alongside the gaming landscape. That should give us a pretty decent basis to move on to my favourite part, the games. I'd like to think I'm a connoisseur of sorts. Why, you could even go as far as to say I'm a scat man! Oh god, Jesus, no, not that, no. Do not let that be the only takeaway from this video.
Yo, credits Game Gaijin here, and thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed part 1 of this mini-series on Kusoge and why they're so freaking cool. If you walk away even a smidge more interested in it than when you got here, then I'll feel like I've done my job. I'm really sorry for how long this took to make, and for going off on a massive tangent. I find etymology fascinating at the best of times, but mix it with 2 of my favourite things, bad retro games and Japanese language, and you have yourself a Game Gaijin time sink right there, my friend. The story that unfurled felt too interesting to just cut, or maybe it was just a sunk cost fallacy thing, but either way, it wound up becoming its own episode. Since it took me about 10 months of on and off work to make, I'll be doing a few shorter videos on other topics before tackling part 2, for my own sanity if nothing else. Shoutouts to my friend Ponjo, who helped me with some bits and bobs and for procuring the magazine for me. Fear not, I made sure to repay them in jelly babies as well as Japanese yen. I also want to shout out Tiny P again and their article on the origins of the word Kusoge. It was a great help to me in my research. Not only was it chock full of useful information, but it introduced me to a bunch of cool retro Japanese magazines. This video wouldn't have been possible without their hard work, so I want to thank them wholeheartedly. If by any chance you enjoyed this and want to see more of me, then feel free to check out some of my other videos. A few months ago I did one on the state of the Japanese retro market, or maybe my look into the potential discovery of a load of sealed UK copies of the infamously rare Rule of Rose is more your fancy. Thanks to all of your support, you now have the option of becoming a channel member. I'm thinking of doing a short post-mortem vlog where I talk about the making of this video. It's more of an excuse to vent my feelings about the whole process and how I have a lot of room for improvement. There will also be bloopers. If you're interested in seeing that, then please consider supporting me by becoming a channel member. Any and all support is massively appreciated. Thanks again for watching until the end. Subscribe and all that good stuff if you haven't already. And until next time, ta-ra ta-ra, ta-ra.